So I love this question because it brings up something way bigger that we're struggling with as a society than just having our toddler show aggression. I reached out to this mom and got more context, so I'm able to answer it in a little bit bigger way. But basically what I want to do here right now is talk about the conditioning beliefs that we have around anger and then peel back the curtain to expose anger for what it really is, which is a totally normal, human, primal feeling that we are all born with, yet we do not have the skills as a collective society to learn how to discharge that, match it, validate it. Right now, as a society, we are still viewing all of anger and aggression through this really negative lens that isn't allowing us to handle it appropriately. Okay, let's keep going. So we have a societal conditioning response to move away from anger and aggression. We look at it as bad. I mean, why wouldn't we? We see everything in the news as criminal, violence, chaos, and it's all falling under the label of aggression. But when we continue to see aggression and anger as bad, then it's so easy for us as parents to link our toddler aggression with this huge future trip of like, oh my gosh, if they're aggressive right now, what is it going to look like later on down the road? Are they going to be the things that I see on TV? And that's just simply not true if we learn how to teach them the emotional regulation skills in order to safely discharge that aggression. So I think it's actually really rude of the human body to be born with every single feeling, and you can feel it from top to bottom in its full entire capacity, but we are not born with regulation skills. And it's like, oh, that is so frustrating. And these need to be taught, right? So sadly, anger has been carried around with this layer of shame and discomfort, and we want to remove it. We want to move away from it as fast as possible, as opposed to looking at it as a data point. And so anger should be for us a data point that tells us that we don't like what's happening right now. And we need to do a better job as a collective society of listening to anger, hearing anger all the way through, and trying to figure out a safe way to discharge this anger. I mean, the hypocrisy as a society, especially as parents, is we tell our children not to be aggressive, but when we feel triggered, we lose it. When we're in a fight with our spouse, we're showing aggression. When we're talking about things that aren't happening well in the work, we're aggressive. But we should be aggressive because aggression and anger are what motivate us to change, motivate us to action. Aggression is that like energy that is going to move us to moving away from something that we don't like towards something that we do like. It's giving us that force to shift, to change. And that should be a celebrated thing, not a stifled thing. So when we're talking about a toddler being aggressive, what we need to understand is they don't have the verbal capacity to say, hey, I really don't like that this child is playing with my favorite toy. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to grab it. They're going to slap, they're going to hit, they're going to bite. And these are the toddler's way of saying, I'm angry, I don't like this, and I'm going to change it by taking action. So when we recognize it, instead of being like, oh my God, I should feel so much shame that my child is doing it, be like, my child is doing the primal response to discomfort. And once we recognize that they're not doing a wrong thing or a bad thing, that they're just doing a human thing, we can kind of relax and be like, okay, now's an opportunity to teach a skill that will help them throughout their entire life. Okay, so let's talk about what that looks like. And instead of telling them, don't do that, right? We want to match their energy, not their aggression. So especially as babies, maybe a baby, bites during breastfeeding or a toddler scratches you, we need to match their energy, but not match their aggression and do the thing back to them. That's just going to add a whole layer of lots of stuff, and I can dive into that later. But matching their energy. Wow, you really showed me how strong you are. Wow, you had big arms, big energy, big force in that. I see you. If you want to dive further into anger management and aggression, Irene Lyon is a wonderful person to follow. And I love what she says. She says, our children need to know that what they feel is okay and that we can handle it as parents. We can handle it. Like we can match them and say, I see you. I got it. loud and clear, I'm here for you. It's totally okay to say a healthy no, right? No, we don't do that, right? It's totally okay. Here's why. Let's stay in connection at the same time, right? Let's remove the shame, because anger and aggression are totally healthy and we feel them too. And let's start to focus on that connection. This is a no. Here is why. Let's connect. I'm here for you. I've got you. You're safe. And I promise you, the big acts of aggression won't be as big. All right, moving on. So I was able to chat with this mom back and forth a little bit more last night and get a lot more context. So I feel much more aware of what is going on in her world, so I can answer this in a better way. So in her upbringing, it is very normal to discipline at a very young age, and even discipline in the terms of spanking or slapping hands to let the child know that that is not what we need to be doing. So this doesn't really feel good in this mom's body. She has a lot of push-pull because the people around her, her elders, who see her not following the same patterns of hitting, slapping, and teaching the lesson that way, are letting her know that she is spoiling the child, she's doing it wrong. And so while it feels better for her, she also has this deep belief of, well, that's how they did it. It's so conditioned in her body. So there's a lot of confusion around discipline. So for this example with a 1 year, 4 month old child, what I would focus less on is correcting the behavior and doing behavioral modifications, and focus more on connection and modeling what I want my child to know is acceptable. So right now in this stage in their life, they are just absorbing and observing everything that we do. They're just like, this is what I do, right? And so they're watching how we do everything, how we brush our teeth, get in the car, how we talk to our families. So they're learning all of the systems and dynamics just from observing us. And so what I would really do is be more intentional about what I am modeling, and focus less on correcting and more on how we can teach these big lessons that we want to teach through moments of connection and play. So I was able to talk further to this mom, and I found out that one of the scenarios she was referencing was that the child throws food during mealtime. And so here's a couple things that I would do to minimize that need for correction and maximize that time for connection and observation. So I would make sure that the child was very hungry getting to the table. I would also make sure that we did something beforehand to get some of the wiggles out, so that playtime isn't here, that we're focusing on mealtime. If the child has too much food and they're throwing it off, I would systematically put 1 or 2 pieces in front of the child to eat that, and then put another piece. I would also, if they like to see like what falls, because that's totally normal, they're exploring the world, I would maybe have a scarf or a ball at the same time and be like, look, this falls and this falls faster or slower, and use a toy. Sorry, I got cut off, but I would have a toy as well, kind of like a replacement for the food that the child wants to throw on the ground. So you can say, food is for my mouth, food goes into my body, and this ball can go on the floor, or this scarf can be dropped onto the floor. So giving them a replacement, so that again, you're staying in connection and you're not getting frustrated and getting triggered and angry over the food situation. Now, this is going to take time and it's going to have to be repeated a lot, but they'll get it. They're going to absorb that food goes in my mouth. It's also a developmental stage where they will move on from this, I promise you. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about how to address that tension that is happening in your family. All right, so you mentioned that the elders in your family have noticed that you're not doing the same thing that they did, and that they're telling you that you're spoiling your child. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for being a cycle breaker, because I know how hard it is to feel like you're not following exactly what you need to be doing. But here is where you get to stand firm in your choice and set a boundary, and you can do it respectfully with compassion, empathy, and love. I know that what you did was how you learned it, and I know that it served you in the moment. It does not serve me, and it does not serve my child, and I'm doing something different. I appreciate where you're coming from, and I hope that you can also respect that I am doing something different. You might get pushback from your family. You probably will. But this is your opportunity to stand firm in what you believe in. It feels better in your body to do it this way than it does to hurt your child physically. So you can stand up and say, I am going to do something differently. I love you. I appreciate you. I respect where you're coming from, but I am going to do this differently. Good luck, and reach out if you have any other questions. When I saw this question, I actually laughed because I was like, is this person in my house? Because I feel like they are a fly on the wall. Yes, the constant refusal and the battle to get anything done. So there's a couple things that just immediately stand out to my mind. Battle. When I prepare for battle, I come with armor, with defense, and I'm ready to be in control and to be right. And so I would suggest one just shift of mindset here is, would you like to be correct and right, or would you like to be connected? And I find that is a big switch for me to be like, okay, this moment is not, I don't need to force the correct response here. I need to stay in connection, and that will serve me better in this moment. So I have a couple ideas. I'll answer a few more. So if you and I were working one-on-one in a coaching situation, I would ask some further questions on how much time you spend in play with your 3-year-old, and not just play as like, we're doing blocks, but how much you're using play as the roadmap for collaboration and cooperation. So I know it sounds silly, but like when you start to feel this refusal, and your spidey senses are rising and your thermometer is rising, and you're insisting and your child is refusing, and you're insisting, your child is refusing, I would immediately, as the adult, stop myself, ground myself, take a few deep breaths, and see how I can wrap this stressful situation in a playful experience. So that can look like, say it's a teeth brushing. I might start brushing my nose and be like, oh, this is a weird place to brush my nose. Where would I brush my teeth instead? Something that my child refused to do for a very long time was put socks and shoes on. I mean, you would put them on, he'd rip them off, you'd put them on, off. It was just this constant thing until the socks became snakes, right? And I would be like, oh, I'm a hungry snake. I'm going to eat your foot. And he would just be like, not this foot, and he'd put the foot out to have the snake eat it. So things like that. How can you wrap a stressful scenario up in play? For instance, we're dealing with my son refuses to eat vegetables. Okay, so we put some avocado on the plate, and he looks at it like, I'm never going to eat that. And then all of a sudden, avocado slice number 1 is named Bob, and we're like, don't eat Bob. And he's like, ha ha ha, and he eats Bob. So how can you wrap the scenario in play? Cover your eyes and say, oh, I do not want to open my eyes and see that you are dressed and at the door and ready to go. I would just fall down laughing so crazy. How can we wrap it in connection and play? This is a great question. Our children are going to come across so many different parenting styles, and it's possibly going to be jarring for you, triggering for you, but it's a great opportunity for you to have a conversation with your child about what they observed. I find that it's better to have the conversation versus pretend that it didn't happen and leave your child wondering, is that how we do it, or is that how we do it? So if, for instance, I think you mentioned that the little child sticks out their tongue at people, and that's just something that you don't do in your household. So maybe when you're leaving the play date, you can say to your child, hey, did you notice when this child was sticking out her tongue? What did you think about that? And see what their response is. It could be like, oh, I didn't like that. Or they could be like, yeah, I was curious about that too. And that offers and opens up an opportunity for you guys to have a bigger conversation about your values. I think at any age, you can start talking about boundaries wrapped up in a value system. So, we value safety in our household. And so, we aren't going to, a boundary crossing is hitting, right? Or we value collaboration and cooperation. And so leaving your plate at the table or yelling at mommy and saying no in my face, that's not really collaboration. So we can have bigger discussions conversations about how our family structure is wrapped in values and what crosses boundaries. And this is a really great opportunity to highlight a difference and to really just have an open, honest conversation about, yeah, there are differences out there, but this is how we do it as a family. Okay, that's a wrap on my first Ask Me Anything. I'm super excited to keep this going, and I will pop a little box in next Thursday and answer your questions on Friday. Thank you so much for the openness, the honesty, and the just desire to show up with more intention. I see you. I'm so excited, and I'm really grateful that you're here. Thank you.